Every year, someone is the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. In 2025, Arch Manning was the betting favorite prior to the season kicking off, and it's safe to say he's not going to win the award, although he has shown improvement in recent weeks. What's going on, everybody? Today, we're going to look at the last 10 years of preseason Heisman favorites according to betting odds and see how their seasons went. This will include their individual performance, how their teams did, and how their careers went after that year. We will look at also who won the Heisman Trophy if they did not win it. Alright, with that said, let's kick things off by going back to 2015. In 2015, TCU quarterback Trevone Boykin was the slight preseason favorite to win the trophy. The previous year, he had been a total beast. He had won Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year and finished 4th in the Heisman race. TCU had gone 12-1 with him under center, and they had dominated Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. He had been an effective dual threat, leading the conference in passing yards and touchdowns, while also rushing for over 700 yards and 8 touchdowns. And he even caught a touchdown in 2014. TCU began 2015 ranked number 2 in the AP poll, and they were expected to be a legit national title contender. To begin the season, TCU ripped off 8 straight wins, with Boykin throwing 28 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. But then the Oklahoma State game happened. The team watched their perfect season slip away as Boykin threw 4 interceptions. They lost by 20 points. The following week versus Kansas, Boykin would exit the game early due to injury and would not return. And the following week, he would also sit out of a game versus Oklahoma where the team had a chance to come back and win, but they just couldn't get it done. Boykin did return after that and helped the team bounce back. And ultimately, he did have a solid regular season and finished 10th in the Heisman race. The winner of the 2015 Heisman Trophy was Alabama's Derrick Henry. His stats were very similar to his junior year. Unfortunately, his TCU career ended on a sour note. Boykin was arrested for assault on a police officer on December 31st, 2015. He was suspended from the team's bowl game versus Oregon and received a year of probation for the incident. Boykin went on to go undrafted in 2016 and eventually signed with the Seahawks, where he served as a backup for a brief time before domestic assault allegations led to the end of his NFL career. Now, before we continue, we are deep into football season, which means before we know it, the season will be over. So why not get out to a game while you still can, which you can do through today's video sponsor, SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events available on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. With the NFL season winding down, I'm thinking about going out to this Falcons-Seahawks game, which is coming up in December. It has some playoff implications, at least for the Seattle Seahawks. SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal, with the green dots meaning good and red dots meaning bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you know I came through for you guys. You can use code KTO for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app, and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Shout out to SeatGeek for the sponsor. Now let's get back to the video. In 2016, the preseason Heisman favorite was Deshaun Watson. The previous year, Clemson and Watson had totally taken college football by storm, and they rattled off 14 straight victories to start the season. They found themselves in the national title game and lost in heartbreaking fashion to Alabama. Watson had been the key to Clemson's success. He had won ACC Player of the Year, he finished 3rd in the Heisman race, and he had won the Davey O'Brien Award given to the nation's best quarterback. Well, 2016 was more of the same magic. Clemson began the season ranked number 2 in the country, and once again made it to the college football playoff after a dazzling 12-1 regular season and ACC championship victory. Their only loss was a game in which Watson threw for 580 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Overall, Watson was one of the best players in the country, and fell just short of winning the Heisman, finishing 2nd behind Lamar Jackson. Jackson had put up video game-like numbers in 2016. However, what Watson and the Tigers did a few weeks later was much more sweet. They pulled off a last-minute come-from-behind national championship victory versus Alabama. This was the perfect way for Watson to end his college career, and he went on to declare for the NFL draft, and he went in the first round of the Houston Texans. Despite an awesome start to his pro career, we all know how things went after the news broke about the allegations surrounding Watson, and his career and reputation have never recovered. In 2017, Sam Darnold was the preseason Heisman favorite. Prior to 2016, USC had been struggling, and after 3 games with Max Brown as the starter, the team turned to freshman Sam Darnold. And this dude was a total baller. they would end the season on a 9-game win streak, which included a Rose Bowl victory versus Penn State where Darnold threw for over 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. He had taken over an unranked USC team, and by the end of the year, they were ranked number 3. The expectations entering 2017 for USC and Darnold were sky high, as they began the season ranked number 4 in the country. After starting 4-0, USC was stunned on the road versus Washington State, a game in which Darnold did not play well. A few weeks later, Notre Dame would curb stomp USC 49-14 in a game that ended USC's shot at making the playoffs and Darnold's chances of winning the Heisman. Darnold's season was a mixed bag. He had been great and he had led the Pac-12 in categories like passing yards, but he also led the conference in interceptions. He did not finish as a Heisman candidate, and ultimately the trophy went to Baker Mayfield. Overall, Darnold truly helped elevate USC during his 2 years as the team starter. And after his 2017 season, Darnold declared for the NFL draft and was taken 3rd overall by the New York Jets in 2018. He's been in the league now for a while, and he struggled at first but found a rhythm recently and is currently a top 10 NFL quarterback with the Seahawks. In 2018, the preseason Heisman favorite was Stanford running back Bryce Love. Man, did Stanford have some beast running backs at this time. They had Bryce Love, who was one of the fastest players in the game and totally dominated the previous season. And before him, they had Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey totally dominated in 2015. He had over 2,600 yards from scrimmage, and he had finished 2nd in the Heisman race. Then in 2016, he had nearly 2,000 total yards, while his backup, Bryce Love, accumulated 866 total yards. Finally, after McCaffrey went to the NFL, Bryce Love put up his own incredible season, leading the country in rushing in 2017 with over 2,100 yards and 19 touchdowns on his way to finishing 2nd in the Heisman race. Stanford had lost 5 games in 2017, but when you got a running back playing at this high of a level, you never know what can happen. Well, 2018 was a rough year for Love. He saw his productivity take a huge dip. He only ran for over 100 yards one time, and he saw his average yards per carry go from above 8 to below 5. Then in a late season game versus Cal, he ended up tearing his ACL, which ended his college career. For why things had gone so poorly before that, the fans at the time blamed the offensive line struggles, bad play calling, and a persistent ankle injury that clearly affected Love's play early in the season. He went on to finish his final season at Stanford with 739 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns, with the Heisman Trophy going to Oklahoma quarterback Kyler Murray. Unfortunately, despite getting drafted in the 4th round, Bryce Love never played a down of NFL football. He now works for the ACC network as an on-air analyst. In 2019, Tua was the slight preseason favorite over Trevor Lawrence. He had had an amazing career to that point. He had taken over as a freshman in the national championship for Jalen Hurts, and he won that game versus Georgia in heroic fashion. Then, after taking over as the full-time starter in 2018, Tua put up massive numbers. He finished pretty much first in every major passing category in the SEC, and he finished 2nd in the Heisman race that year, before they lost in the national championship to Clemson. Well, in 2019, Tua got off to an all-time legendary start. His first 5 games, he had 23 touchdowns and no picks. And then through 9 games, he had 33 touchdowns and just 3 picks. But in that 9th game, with a 35-7 lead over Mississippi State, Tua suffered a devastating hit where his hip was dislocated, he broke his nose, and suffered a concussion. He had to be carted off the field and was flown to Birmingham Hospital, where he would undergo surgery, which ended his spectacular season. Tua went on to finish 10th in the Heisman race, and ultimately, if he never got hurt, he probably would have finished as the runner-up. There was no way he was going to win it that year because Joe Burrow was on another planet. Regardless, Tua was incredible at Alabama, and he ended up going 5th overall in the 2020 NFL Draft to the Miami Dolphins. Injury concerns have followed him ever since his college days. However, he's been a starter ever since he took over for Ryan Fitzpatrick as a rookie, and he signed a 4-year, $212 million extension in 2024. Despite struggles as of recently, Tua has had some great success in the pros, including leading the league in passer rating in 2022 and yards in 2023. In 2020, Justin Fields was the preseason Heisman favorite with a slight edge over, once again, Trevor Lawrence. He had started his career at Georgia before transferring to Ohio State and putting up monster numbers in his first year starting. Fields put up 51 total touchdowns, just 3 interceptions, and he won Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. That team was so loaded, they had J.K. Dobbins also run for over 2,000 yards, and Chase Young was a total beast, and those three all finished in the top 7 or 8 in the Heisman race that season. This team was just so loaded talent-wise. That Ohio State team went undefeated until they lost to an undefeated Clemson team in the playoffs. And then that Clemson team lost to undefeated LSU in the national championship. Anyways, despite the preseason Heisman odds, this season was probably the most bizarre in college football history. COVID threw a massive wrench into the landscape of the sport, causing many players to opt out of the season, a near delay that took the season into the spring of 2021, and teams postponing or just skipping games entirely. So this season just has a massive asterisk by it. For Fields, Ohio State ended up playing in just 5 regular season games and 3 postseason games, the Big Ten Championship and the College Football Playoff. They found themselves in the National Championship, but they got blown out by Alabama. Fields played well given the circumstances, and considering he only had 6 games on his resume before the Heisman ceremony, there was no way he was going to win the award given some of the other stats that other guys put up. He finished 7th that year, and ultimately the winner went to Devonta Smith, the receiver from Alabama. Ultimately, Fields declared for the NFL draft and was selected 11th overall by the Bears in 2021. He's bounced around the league, never really finding a groove as a starter. Entering 2021, Oklahoma's quarterback Spencer Rattler was the preseason Heisman favorite. The previous year, he had taken over as the team starter and played well. He led the Big 12 in all major passing categories, and the team went 9-2. Oklahoma began the 2021 season ranked number 2 in the country, and they were fully expected to be a national championship contender. This was a unique year, 1, considering we were coming off a weird COVID season, and 2, all but one player from the top 10 finishers in 2020's Heisman race went to the NFL. The only one returning was Bryce Love, a running back at Iowa State. So he was most likely not going to win the award. Anyways, Oklahoma got off to a 5-0 start in 2021 with Rattler under center. However, his play hadn't been at the level he and his coaches had hoped. This included throwing 2 picks and barely surviving Tulane, as well as barely mustering 16 points versus West Virginia. Then, after struggling to get going against Texas, Lincoln Riley benched Rattler in favor of Caleb Williams, and he never looked back. After falling behind 28-7 in that game, the backup Caleb Williams ended up being a total star, and he led a come-from-behind victory. This was evidence enough that he was the better quarterback at the time, and they rolled with him for the rest of the season. Crazy enough, Oklahoma didn't have either of these quarterbacks on their team the following year. Lincoln Riley ended up going to USC to take over their head coaching job, and Caleb went with him. And for Rattler, he transferred to South Carolina. For the Heisman in 2021, that honor went to Alabama's Bryce Young, who won the award by a landslide. And for Rattler, well, he spent the next 2 years on a bad South Carolina team, and never recaptured the hype that he had around him after the 2020 season. He was still a decent prospect, and was drafted in the 5th round by the Saints, and was their starter for a brief time, although he's now on the bench. In 2022, the preseason Heisman favorite was C.J. Stroud. After taking over at Ohio State for Justin Fields in 2021, this dude put up monster numbers. He ended up with 44 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, and he finished 4th in the Heisman race in 2021. And going into 2022, Ohio State was ranked number 2 in the country. Well, Ohio State absolutely dominated through the first 11 weeks, mostly blowing out every team they played. That was until they got crushed by Michigan in the final regular season game. This cost Ohio State a chance to play in the Big Ten Championship. But because they had such a good season, as well as Michigan being undefeated at the time they played them, both teams made the college football playoff. Stroud had a downtick in production, but still put up similar numbers to his previous season. It was enough to see him finish 3rd in the Heisman race. Ohio State fans felt like C.J. Stroud would have won the award if it wasn't for Ryan Day and how he coached in that Michigan game. Ultimately, Ohio State would lose to Georgia in the first round of the playoffs that year, and that game was pretty much the national championship because Georgia went on to absolutely destroy TCU in the big game. For Stroud, he declared for the NFL draft and went 2nd overall to the Houston Texans in 2022. Right away, he was a beast winning Rookie of the Year after leading Houston to a great season. Now, they just got to figure out how to protect him. In 2023, the preseason Heisman favorite was Caleb Williams. This meant that if he had won the award, he would be the first 2-time winner since Archie Griffin in the 1970s. It was unlikely, but considering that most of the other candidates from the previous season had gone to the NFL or graduated, it made sense that he was at the top. His college trajectory had been quite the journey. He took over at Oklahoma and was a surprising breakout star. Then he followed his coach to USC, and they orchestrated a huge one-year turnaround, taking a 4-8 team the previous year and winning 11 games in their first season. Williams ended up winning the Heisman Trophy that year. So, how did he and USC follow up things in 2023? Well, they started things off strong, cruising out to a 5-0 start with Williams throwing 21 touchdowns and just 1 interception. But there were signs that this team wasn't as good as initially advertised, and they suffered a late season collapse. Williams had an ugly performance versus Notre Dame, throwing 3 picks in a blowout loss. And from there, USC would only win 1 more game, finishing the regular season 7-5. To be fair, Williams' numbers were pretty similar to his previous season, and in some categories they were better. But when you have a couple bad performances and the team overall just falls off a cliff, you're not going to finish high in the Heisman race. He did not finish in the top 10, and the award eventually went to Jaden Daniels from LSU. The truth was, a lot of USC's downfall that season had to do with the defensive struggles of the team. In fact, they gave up over 40 points 5 times over his final 8 starts. In a lot of ways, Williams was the only reason that this team didn't lose more games. After the season, Williams was seen as the best NFL prospect, and he went number 1 overall in the 2024 NFL Draft. Currently, he's still trying to figure things out with the Bears. In 2024, the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy was Oregon's new transfer, Dillon Gabriel. This one was pretty interesting because the previous season he had not finished in the top 10 of the Heisman race, and he was on a different team. I think because Bo Nix had transferred there previously and had so much more success at Oregon than he did at Auburn, this factored into what people thought Gabriel would do with this loaded roster. Oregon was coming off a 12-2 season where they won the Fiesta Bowl, and with a roster as loaded as theirs, it really felt like if they just plugged in a decent quarterback into their offense, they would be national title contenders. And Gabriel had been more than decent. At Oklahoma, he threw for 30 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions in 2023. Well, 2024 got off to a slow start for Oregon. They had close calls versus Idaho and Boise State, but after those games, they began to roll. They dismantled UCLA, they beat number 2 Ohio State on the road, they crushed Illinois on the road, and then they went on to win the Big Ten championship versus number 3 Penn State. During the season, Gabriel had done his part. The team was undefeated and they were the number 1 team in the country, and he had had a great year statistically. Ultimately, he finished 3rd in the Heisman race, mostly due to the amazing individual performances of Ashton Jeanty, who was the runner-up, and Travis Hunter, who was doing things that no one had really seen, at least in a very long time. Following the Heisman ceremony, Gabriel and the Ducks were slotted to play Ohio State for a second time, and the rematch was in the Rose Bowl. And it was nothing like the first game. The Buckeyes absolutely crushed Gabriel and the Ducks by 20 points. Despite the loss, Gabriel wrapped up one of the most unique yet successful college football careers. He played 3 years at UCF, transferred to Oklahoma for 2 years and had success, then transferred again and had another great season. He went on to get selected in the 3rd round by the Cleveland Browns and is currently their starting quarterback. So now we arrived at 2025, and the Heisman preseason favorite this year was Arch Manning, and it's safe to say that he's not going to win the award. Ultimately, this video goes to show that just because someone's the preseason favorite doesn't mean all that much. It might mean that they will have a good season, usually more times than not, but the odds of them winning the trophy are still very low because there's just so many variables, and there's a lot of players in the country. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 2004 to find the last preseason favorite to actually win the award. That honor goes to Matt Leinart. It's also the last time USC won a national title.
Pass again, looking long, has a man open, but he can't catch up, and when he does, Reggie Bush at the 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, USC!